Hi Kathy, I'm so excited to say that your marketing implementation guide is complete. So as you can see, what it contains is this document, which is 22 pages long, and it may seem very overwhelming just because there's so many pages, but basically what this video that I'm making is going to do is actually kind of go through the guide and explain things. That way it's easy for you to understand and kind of get a clearer view of everything and why you should be doing this particular strategy. So with this guide comes not only this document, but also two Excel sheets, which I will be showing in this video as well. So one Excel sheet is a content calendar template, which you can use to write out all of your social media content and plan ahead before going and scheduling it or posting it, which I'll get further into down the line. And then the other one is a monthly analytics report for all three platforms that you're on, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, to track the growth that the accounts have over every single month. And again, with that one, I'll be explaining it further down the line as well. So now it's time to get started into the official whole guide, and I'm really excited to show it to you. So this is your guide. Obviously, this is the front page, but if you scroll down, this is the table of contents. So this kind of outlines where everything is and what exactly is contained in it. So the first thing we'll be going over is the marketing strategy. The second thing we'll be going over is competitor analysis. After that will be a social media audit of your current platforms. Below that is my personal process for writing and scheduling content and how you can use it for yourself. After that is explaining the content calendar, and again, I'll bring up that Excel sheet. Below that is a growth strategy, so that means ways that you can organically grow your social media accounts, because obviously with social media you want to be continuing to grow them and reaching more people. After that is a monthly analytics report template, which is the other Excel spreadsheet, and also an explanation going through everything. And lastly is a conclusion of the guide itself. So now to get started with your marketing strategy. So I kind of outlined your marketing strategy for social media, your email list, and also a potential blog on your site, just in case you do kind of decide to further your emails that you send out, or also any articles on your site. So to get started with your social media, first I started with talking about Quincy Catholic Academy. So whenever I create a marketing strategy, I always start with a summary of the business. You want to know what the business is, who they serve, what they provide, any important information that should be known. So as you can see, I basically copied and pasted what you wrote in the form that you filled out, but also I highlighted that you formed as a merger of the three Catholic schools in Quincy. And I actually highlighted that because, as you can see in red, this will be used to set you apart from others. Because you are now the only Catholic school in Quincy, local families should be choosing you instead of the other options. So anyone in Quincy who is considering a Catholic school should be choosing you because there aren't any other Catholic schools in Quincy. So I highlighted that because that's something that you kind of need to continue focusing on and emphasizing throughout the social media content that you create. Below that, I wrote the tuition, which I found from your website. And then in red, I wrote that it's important to note because it's a part of your target audience. Even though I know that you do provide financial aid to families, you want to make sure that you're targeting families who are able to pay for school out of pocket anyway, regardless whether they're getting financial aid or not. So that falls under the target market. Now going into the target market, what you had provided was that in the form was that it's for families with children ages 3 to 12 in areas including Quincy, Milton, Boston, Randolph, Braintree, and Holbrook. So I know that you wrote that, but that is a little bit broad. So I actually went a little bit further and further developed who I personally think your target market is after looking through the answers on the form you filled out and also your website. So one thing I wrote was that your target market consists of parents who value a private education with teachers who are dedicated to the long-term success of their parents, not just in their childhood years. So I did a little bit of research on this, and I showed that based off of a study completed by the U.S. Department of Education, these were the findings. So private school students generally perform higher than their public school counterparts. Private high schools have more demanding graduation requirements than public high schools, even though you aren't a high school. You are an elementary school and middle school, which is kind of similar. So I imagine that you guys will have more demanding requirements than the public elementary and middle schools. Private school graduates are more likely than their peers from public schools to have completed advanced level courses. And private school students are more likely than public school students to complete a bachelor's or advanced degree by their mid-20s. So kind of summarizing that, in the red I wrote that the education and support QCA provides will set the students up for success in their high school, college, and career years. And that's something that you really want to stress throughout your social media strategy, that it's not just a school to provide these children with education, it's actually a school that will kind of set them up for success not only in their education, but also way further down the line with the rest of their lives. Another thing that I noted about your target market was that it's parents who prefer a more inclusive environment for their children. So obviously private schools have a lower amount of students in there, and obviously that means that the student-to-teacher ratio is lower than public schools. So in a typical public school, there's about one teacher to every 25 students. But in your school, it's going to be much smaller, and that's really important because a lot of parents find it really important that their students are getting more attention in the classroom, and that's something that your school really provides. I also wrote that you have a very diverse population. So in this day and age, it's really important to focus on diversity and kind of exposing children to different backgrounds and values and cultures, which is all really great in forming their characteristics and personality. And you allow families of every background, every religion, all of that into your school, which is amazing. And so that's something that you also really need to focus on showing in social media, that even though you are a Catholic school, you're not only focused on just Catholic students. You're accepting to anyone from any religion, any background, any culture. They're welcome at Quincy Catholic Academy. So in that red, I wrote that a need for safety and inclusion is really important in today's world. And QCA parents understand that their children are safe from harm in this friendly environment. So they don't need to worry about any bullying or any other issues that happen, unfortunately, in public schools. They know that their children are safe and cared for in your environment. I also, as the last part from what I gathered, is that your target market consists of families who have a strong emphasis on their faith and community. So they're not necessarily Catholic, but they just have a strong emphasis on their faith in general and also giving back to the community. So you personally have a daily prayer, daily religion classes, monthly masses, and sporadic prayer services. And you also value giving back to the community through collections, donations, fundraisers to help various causes. So in the red, I wrote that instilling children with faith and good morals will allow them to have continuous support and guidance throughout their lifetime, while practicing serving others will establish a precedent for students to continue giving back to the community years down the line. So if you're instilling these values into the students at Quincy Catholic Academy to give back to the community, be a really moral person, that means that they're most likely going to continue to have those characteristics throughout the rest of their lives. So I wrote that it's really important that you show that, again, you're not just focusing on educating your students, you're really focused on bringing them long-term success as both a student and a person. And the last part that I wrote that I highlighted because it's really important is that Quincy Catholic Academy attracts families who not only care about receiving a quality education for their child, but also leaving a lasting impression on him or her with good morals and traits. Moving on, we went to your social media goals. So you wrote as your social media goal in the form is to get the name and description of Quincy Catholic Academy to as many families as possible in the most effective and efficient way. But I went a little bit further and showed 4 things as how that will be achieved. So the 4 things are establishing brand awareness, gaining credibility, driving traffic to your website, and fostering a community. So focusing on those 4 strategies will all lead to the bigger goal of getting the name and description of Quincy Catholic Academy to these families that you're really, really wanting to reach. After that, I included similar schools to analyze for social media inspiration. So whenever you're getting social media content, it's really important to kind of think of other schools that are doing really well on social media and kind of keep them in the back of your mind for inspiration. So you're not going to copy what these schools are doing on social media, but you're kind of going to pull from them for inspiration. So if you see some type of content that one school posts and you say, oh, hey, like I really like that idea, you can see how you can twist it and use it for yourself. So I listed similar schools. So as you can see, I only listed 5. And I said that only Catholic schools are considered in this because you want to view the social media strategies they're doing and see if they're doing any tactics that may work for you. So obviously you can't really see what a public school is doing because that's different than Catholic schools, so that's why I only listed these 5. Below that is content categories. So this is probably one of my favorite sections because content categories is the type of content you can be posting on social media. So what types of posts do you want out there? What types of posts will perform well? All of that, any ideas that you have. So I personally came up with 7. So the first one I listed was events. So what you can do is post any events that you have going on. So if you're doing any like concerts, or if you have any award ceremonies or anything like that, you can promote it. And through posting the events, you can encourage attendance and show how interactive and community-focused Quincy Catholic Academy is. And for these events, you can promote them prior to the event. So for example, if you were to have a concert, say on a Friday night, you could start posting it at the latest, or start promoting it at the latest the Friday before that. So you want to promote events at least a week in advance, but I'd say about a week and a half to 2 weeks would be great. And then you can also post photos and posts after the event happened to kind of show people how awesome it was, what types of things happened, all of that. Another content category I listed is daily prayers, Bible verses, etc. So obviously, even though you do have a very inclusive population at your school, you are still a Catholic school, and since you do have daily prayer and masses and all of that stuff, I think that posting prayers or Bible verses or anything of that nature on your Facebook page or Twitter or Instagram would go over really well. Below that would be a recognition of Catholic holidays. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the daily prayer and Bible verses idea. And the same reason to do it is for the reason above, which is to show your faith. Below that is links to your weekly email blast. So I know that you send out emails to the parents of your school every week, but I'm not sure if you have it so that they can view the email online. So for example, with a lot of email marketing providers, you can send out an email. You can actually get like a preview link where people can just copy and paste the link into a browser and instantly be able to read the email. So I think if your emails have that option, you should definitely share them on social media, because if, for example, if a parent doesn't see the email, they can see it on Facebook. Or it would also be really beneficial to give an insight of what Quincy Catholic Academy does to parents of potential students. So I know that you said your emails really highlight what happened at the school that week or anything else like that. So if you kind of show what's going on to these potential parents of the parents of students that you'd love to have at the school, I think that would be really cool. Another thing would be weekly faculty introductions. So one thing that works really well for a lot of businesses is actually introducing their employees. So saying like their name, you can give a picture, you can say like their background or their credibility, what their favorite thing to do is, what their favorite quote is, what their favorite food is, anything like that. Just basically giving a little introduction of each faculty and staff member to kind of give more information about them and get them familiar with the audience and kind of get people to know them outside of just the Quincy Catholic Academy employee role is something really cool to see. And then below that is links to any press mentions. So if you ever get mentioned in any local newspapers, magazines, etc., you can post the links to those press mentions, because that actually establishes credibility by showing that Quincy Catholic Academy was featured in a respected publication. And the last content category I have is doing behind the scenes posts. So I always say that people on social media are nosy. They're on social media because they want to learn about what other people and what they're doing. So if you're kind of getting these behind the scene posts, you can give parents an insight into what QCA does. And then it ends up being really cool because they're seeing the school doing things that they normally wouldn't see. So, for example, you could share something unique that students did that week, an assembly the students had, a field trip the students went on, etc. So those are considered behind the scenes because it's just kind of a look into the everyday life of Quincy Catholic Academy. So that is your social media strategy, and now we're on the email newsletters. So this section is really short because I told you that based off of our phone call, you really have this under control, which is awesome. Because these are sent to parents of current students, you won't need to change much. But one thing I included that you should include as well in the red is that if you're not already doing this, you should insert a line at the bottom of the email that links to your social media accounts and just say something like, follow us on social media or something like that. So converting those parents to liking your Facebook page, following your Twitter, following your Instagram, that will really help. And I do think, again, that you should share the newsletters on social media if possible so that parents of potential students can get a glimpse of a typical week at Quincy Catholic Academy, which will incentivize parents to send their children there due to the large focus on education, community, and service. So that's the email newsletter strategy, and the last part of the strategy is the blog. So I noticed on your website that it says that there's a link called, or tab called Weekly Communications, and that's a prime spot to be posting links to the weekly email blast or even crafting your own blog posts. However, when I click on Read More under those, it brings me to a section with a page with very little info. And you don't really want to be sending visitors to these dead ends, or they will be influenced to exit out quickly. So you want to make sure that every page on your website leads them to somewhere else on the site. So you don't want to have these dead ends where if someone clicks on Read More and they say, oh, there's actually not much more to read. That's kind of pointless, if that makes sense. So I would say maybe in these weekly communications you can share links to the emails, or you can come up with whole new blog posts. And blog posts are a really great tool to utilize to help with SEO. So that was the social media strategy, and now we're on to the competitor social media analysis. So I started out by listing competitors. Your competitors, as you listed in the form, is St. Agatha, BC High, Notre Dame, also Xaverian, Milton Academy, Thayer Academy, Quincy Schools, Milton Schools, Boston Schools, Holbrook Schools, and Randolph Schools. And I think I might be missing two, but basically it's Catholic schools, private schools, and public schools. So you actually have a lot of competitors to really set yourself against. So in this section, I actually go through and I analyzed all your competitors' social media accounts to point out their strengths and their weaknesses. And then under both the strengths and the weaknesses, I made notes to see how you could actually, what you could actually learn from those strengths and weaknesses and what you could do to kind of get better than those strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, I started out with St. Agatha, and I listed 4 strengths that they had. So even though their Facebook posts were very sporadic, their posts still got great traction, which is surprising. So examples that they posted that did well were promoting their social event, showing photos from an award ceremony, photos from a movie event, and a photo from before Mass. So basically what I said was to use these photos as your advantage to give ideas. Are there any social events you can promote? Are there photos from social events or ceremonies that you can share? If so, post them, because if they're doing well on St. Agatha's Facebook page, then they'll do well on yours. I also wrote that their Facebook page has an average of 5-star reviews. So I said, what can you do to get 5-star reviews on your page? Can you reach out to parents of current or even past students and ask them to leave a review? So maybe you could mention or maybe send out an email asking any parents to leave a review on your page, because you love the support that they've given, and maybe make a note of something like that and then just ask them to leave a review. That would really help with kind of attracting the parents of the students that you're trying to reach. Below that, I listed that they post great content on Twitter when active. So promoting events, encouraging families to pick up yard signs promoting the school, sharing activities students did, and more. And so I wrote, is there anything similar you can share? If so, you should be doing it. The last thing for their strengths is their Instagram account is very active. So their best performing posts feature of their students and faculty that shows them at events, having fun, etc. And I said, are you able to post photos of your students and faculty to portray the same value of community? So St. Agatha really shows that their school is all about community, and they're all one school, one community. So are you able to share any photos that kind of portray the same lifestyle? Are you able to show that Quincy Catholic Academy is also one school, one community, all inclusive? Going on to their weaknesses, they are extremely inconsistent with Facebook posts. So this is a leeway for you to have an active Facebook presence to get your name out there more. I'm going to go into this further down in the guide, but you should be posting twice per day on Facebook. So kind of having that active presence will allow you to get more traction on your posts and therefore more people to see them. They also have 2 Twitter accounts, which is very conflicting for their audience because people could go to one Twitter account and be like, oh, okay, I'll follow this. And it ends up being their old Twitter account that hasn't been updated since 2015. So that's a dead end. Or parents could come across both Twitter accounts and say, oh, these are both for Milton, Massachusetts. Which one's the right one? And they have no idea which one they should be following. So it's actually good that you only have one Twitter account and that you don't have a duplicate because it prevents that issue for you. Next, they have been inactive on their newer Twitter account for almost 6 months. Again, this is another leeway for you to have an active Twitter presence. And again, I'll be posting about this, or posting and talking about this later on down in the guide. But you should be posting 4 to 6 times per day on Twitter. So if you really have that active presence on social media, that will totally help with spreading the word about QCA. Another thing is their social media accounts all have different handles, which makes it difficult to remember. So it's St. Agatha School on Facebook, St. Agatha Milton on Twitter, and St. Agatha School 83 on Instagram. So that makes it a little bit confusing because they're all different variations, which means it could be a little bit hard for people to find the accounts. So I made a note to ask if it was possible for you to have consistent social media handles across all 3 platforms to prevent that confusion on your own. And lastly, second to last, if they're not following anyone on Instagram and therefore probably not engaging with anyone. So again, I'll be describing this further down in the guide under growth strategy, but one of the main purposes of Instagram is to build relationships, and this cannot be done if they're not following anyone to engage with. So you should be following parents of current students as well as parents of potential students to keep that engagement and relationship building up. And lastly, they're not using hashtags on Instagram. Again, I'll be going into this further, but hashtags are one of the easiest and fastest ways to grow an engaged following of your target market. So capitalize on their lack of hashtag use by using the right hashtags for QCA on Instagram. Below that is BC High, Xaverian, Notre Dame, and Catholic Memorial. So I actually listed these 4 schools together because they had pretty much the same strengths and weaknesses, which was very interesting. Because if these 4 schools have the same strengths and weaknesses across social media, then this gives you the upper hand to see what they're doing and either kind of imitate it if it's a strength or improve it if it's a weakness. So their first strength is that they have large and engaged followings on all three accounts. But I said this is honestly probably due to their strong ties with alumni, especially BC High. They have a very large alumni network, which kind of makes it possible to have these larger, more engaged audiences. So I wrote, what can you do to increase your followings genuinely? Are you able to encourage families to follow your social media accounts? So with that first question, it kind of reflects on the growth strategy section that I'm going to be talking about with increasing your followings genuinely. But the second section, are you able to encourage families to follow your social media accounts? As I mentioned, that's something you could put in your email newsletters each week. Are you able to ask parents to follow you on social media to stay up to date with everything that Quincy Catholic Academy has going on? Below that is they're very active on Facebook with showing what current and event past students are up to, and also events that are taking place, such as class activities, sports, etc. So I wrote, are there any upcoming events that you can showcase? And are you able to show where your alumni are now and what they're doing? So one thing that's really cool is these schools are showing their alumni and what they're up to now. So the alumni maybe very recently graduated, a few years graduated, 10 years graduated, whatever. But they're kind of showing their whereabouts, which is really cool because then it kind of relates back to what I noticed or what I noted in the target market is that the people you're trying to reach are parents of students who want their children to have long-term success in their life. So not just while they're getting their education at Quincy Catholic Academy, but also later on in their life with their high school, college, and career years. So if you're showing the whereabouts of alumni and what they're doing now, especially if they're doing something really awesome, you can kind of show parents like, oh, this student is a alumni of Quincy Catholic Academy, and look what they're doing now. So I think that's something that's really cool and also establishes your credibility. Another thing is that they have more than one social media account for different aspects of the school. So one for the school itself, one for athletics, and etc. So it's actually a benefit for you that you only have one general social media account for Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, because then your audience only has to go to one place for information instead of having to search multiple accounts. And below that, they're very active on Instagram, especially with showing what students are doing. So retreats, sports, accomplishments, etc. So I said, is there anything you can share that highlights your students, such as achievements, athletics, etc.? Showcasing these will show your target market that Quincy Catholic Academy students are talented, driven, and successful. That wraps up their strengths, and now moving on to their weaknesses. So the first weakness is they have different handles on all three platforms, which makes it difficult for the audience to remember or find. So this is similar to St. Agatha's. Are you able to secure the same username across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to avoid any confusion? Another weakness is on Twitter, they do a lot of retweeting of other accounts and don't share much of their own content. So although it's good to share content from other sources, you want to make sure that you're still sharing your own, which is part of the 1/3 social media rule and another thing I'll be going over later on in this guide. They also don't do any engaging on Twitter. So you want to make sure you're engaging with parents of current students and parents of potential students to build that relationship, foster that community, establish your credibility, and drive people to your website, which are all the 4 things that I listed under the tactics of having that one broad social media goal of getting the name and description of Quincy Catholic Academy to everyone. So you want to make sure that you're engaging with people on every social media platform that you're on, or else you won't build these relationships, because sales come from relationships. So because people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. So therefore, if you're building that relationship, you're already showing that kind of relationship factor of people doing business with people that they know, like, and trust. And another thing that they're not doing is they're not using hashtags on Instagram. So I listed some hashtags you can use below, but these schools are not using any hashtags, and hashtags actually help to reach a wider audience. The next one is they post the same content across all platforms. So you want to make sure that your content is differentiated for each platform, because each platform has a different use and different purpose. So for example, Twitter is meant for really quick news. Facebook is meant for news with an opinion, because there's a longer amount of space to type. Instagram is meant for sharing visuals, so photos. You want to show people what you're doing. So you kind of want to cater your content to account for those different platforms and their purposes. And lastly, this is what Notre Dame specifically does, but they don't share much of other people's content. So some of those schools shared too much of other people's content. Notre Dame doesn't share much of other people's content. You want to make sure that you're sharing your own content as well as other people's content, because sharing content put out there by other people helps to build credibility and trust. Because if you're sharing an article written by another source, it shows that you trust that article and you have knowledge about that subject to share it, which therefore builds credibility and trust with your audience for you. On to the next schools. I listed Milton Academy and Thayer Academy together because, again, they had similar strengths and weaknesses because they're the private schools. So we just did the Catholic schools and now we're on the private schools. So their one strength was that they post engaging content that performs well. Again, this is really similar to the Catholic schools, but are there any student highlights, upcoming events, or achievements that you can showcase? They had two weaknesses. The first one is they only post a few times per week on Facebook. Make sure to post daily, as consistency helps to develop a solid and trusted social media presence. And also, they share the same content across all platforms. So again, it's okay to repurpose content down the line, but the same content should not be posted on the same day, as each platform has a different purpose. And then lastly, I listed the public schools together because they were very similar. So Quincy, Milton, Boston, Randolph, Braintree, and Holbrook. They had two strengths. They have a larger number of followers because they have a larger number of students in the system. So because they're public schools, they cover not only these elementary schools, but also elementary schools, and some have more than one, middle schools, some have more than one, and high schools. So some have more than one. So because they have so many students in the system, obviously they're going to have more followers. But one thing to note is that follower counts don't always mean something. It all depends on the engagement that's involved. So focus on engaging with your audience in a genuine way to build real relationships. And the second strength is they don't necessarily need to market their school to parents. So if you think about it, these public schools are getting funded through taxes and other methods. So they don't really necessarily need to market to their schools to go because they're getting the money either way. But with these Catholic and private schools, you really need to market your school because you're a big part of the money that you get is from the tuition that your students pay. So convincing students to go to the school isn't as big of a priority to them because they're getting the tax money still. But one thing that you really need to focus on is kind of convincing them to why they should be coming to this private school and paying their money out of pocket to come. And then they also have two weaknesses. So the first is that their social media accounts are often difficult to find because there are so many other towns with the same name in other states. So they don't differentiate themselves across from others. So by having a distinguished name, Quincy Catholic Academy is able to set themselves apart from everyone else. So because you have such a unique name, it's so much easier to find you on social media, which makes things a million times easier for you. The second weakness is they're pretty inactive on their accounts because teachers and faculty have less time to update the accounts. So they probably don't have a marketing person in the school system to handle their social media and their other marketing efforts. Anything is usually probably done by the superintendent or even a principal. But since you guys have kind of like a smaller scale school, it's much easier for you to update your accounts. So you can have a few teachers and staff that can post, which will end up guaranteeing that you have consistent content across all three channels. And below that, I listed social media rankings. So for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I listed each school in the ranking based on how many Facebook likes they had, or how many Twitter followers they had, or how many Instagram followers they had. So with Facebook and Twitter, Quincy Catholic Academy ranked 11th, and with Instagram, it ranked 9th. So that really isn't that bad. Even though it's on the lower half, there's definitely a ton of room for improvement, which will happen with this strategy that I'm giving you for you to set in place. And then this is an overall analysis. So this is just kind of a general conclusion based off of the whole competitor analysis that I did. So based off of what your competitors are doing, you should, 1, create posts that portray the community and learning environment at Quincy Catholic Academy. So this is what a lot of schools did. They showed what their students were doing, what their alumni were doing, any fun activities that were going on in the school. This really portrayed the really fun environment and inclusion that these schools had, and so you should really consider doing the same. The second is you should be staying consistent with posting content. So not every school is consistent with their content. One thing that you should be doing is staying consistent and posting every day. Consistency is king. In order to get the traction on social media that you're hoping to get, making sure to post daily or even just Monday through Friday, since your school is just Monday through Friday, is important in gaining brand awareness and spreading the word. Also, following and engaging with your target market on Instagram. So these schools aren't doing this. They're not following people. They're not engaging with people. They're not building those relationships. This is where you step in. This is where you start following the parents of the students that you'd like to see at your school. And basically, this will kind of put your name out there more and establish that initial relationship. So I say that your target market can be found on Instagram in 3 ways. So 1, checking to see who's following you. So if it's their parents of your current students or parents who are interested in potentially sending their kids to Quincy Catholic Academy, follow them back. You can also follow the people who are following your competitors. So if people are following other Catholic schools on social media, they're interested in Catholic education, which is something you need to capitalize on. Following the people who follow your competitors is a common growth and awareness strategy because it piques people's interests and causes them to take notice of your brand. And the third strategy you can do is engaging with and following people on the hashtags you use. So again, further down in this guide, I list the hashtags you should be using on Instagram, but they're meant for reaching a wider audience, which in turn allows more people to notice your brand. So the hashtags you should be using can be found in the growth strategy section, and comb through these hashtags and follow the people that use them, as well as like and comment on their posts to build that relationship. Following and engaging with your target market will allow those important relationships to be built and develop that know, like, and trust factor, the 3-part factor that people need in order to do business with someone, which will eventually lead to those followers becoming paying families of Quincy Catholic Academy. And lastly, differentiate your content on each platform. Many of your competitors are posting the same exact content across all 3 platforms. Although it is okay to repurpose content to use on different channels, they should be a little bit different from each other to adjust for the purpose of each platform. You also want to make sure that content varies because you don't want your target audience to see something you posted on Twitter and Facebook that they already saw on Instagram. Focus on keeping things different. So Instagram is meant for visuals, as I mentioned, Twitter is meant for sharing quick news, and Facebook is meant for sharing news and updates. Now we're on to your social media audit. So I listed and analyzed your current social media platforms and listed their strengths and weaknesses and what you can do to improve. So the strength that you had on Twitter was posting interactive content of showing what students are doing in their classrooms and where they're going on field trips. So take that a little bit further. Could you have a teacher do a Twitter teacher takeover where the teacher updates Twitter while a fun activity is taking place in the classroom? So an example is the installation activity with the 2nd graders that you posted about. You could have had the 2nd grade teacher do constant posting during that activity time to really get an interactive feel of what the students were doing. And if parents were to see what their students are doing, that's huge because a lot of parents will ask their children what they did at school that day. And some children are so excited that they share everything, but other children are just say, oh, nothing. And obviously parents know they did something, right? And so an easy way to learn what they did is by having the teachers doing these takeovers and really showing parents what exactly they learned that day. Also, you tag the Boston Catholic Schools and superintendent mirrors and posts to allow for more engagement and reach in case the accounts reply to posts, retweet them, etc. So I said take that a little bit further. Every time you do something where you have the possibility to tag an account in a post, do it. So you could have tagged Gillette Stadium in the Fitness Day tweet, JFK Library in the Senate Immersion tweet, etc. So whenever you have the possibility to tag a person or a place or a business, do it because it kind of gives it more exposure. So your weakness. You were inconsistent from the end of the 2016 to 2017 school year to the beginning of the 2017 to 2018 school year. So to improve, focus on what type of content you post about during the summer, when parents are actually more likely to be online because it's a time of more relaxation and less work. So during this time, since you're not really in school and can't really post about the activities that students are doing, could you post about how to enroll before the new year, what students are up to in the summer, what improvements the school has been making over the summer, anything else? And then the second weakness is you actually tag Boston Catholic schools incorrectly in a few tweets. So there are a few tweets where Boston Catholic School is tagged incorrectly. So if a username is tagged next to an exclamation point or question mark, the username will not show up. You have to make sure there's a space in between them. And I said you will know if they're tagged incorrectly if the username turns blue. So in the first tweet, I showed an example of a well-tagged tweet, and as you can see, CSO Boston is highlighted blue. And in the second example, it's a poorly tagged tweet. As you can see, the @ sign is right next to the exclamation point, so CSO Boston was not tagged because it is not blue, so therefore CSO Boston technically didn't get mentioned in the tweet. Facebook. Strengths. It is your largest social media platform. Facebook is the platform that you should focus on the most, as that is where the majority of your target market exists. So continue to grow and post consistent content to make sure you're always engaging with parents of current and potential students. Also, you post a lot of pictures and videos. So Facebook posts that have videos or pictures in them perform better than Facebook posts with just text. So whenever possible, include a photo or video with a post in order to increase your reach and engagement on your page. A weakness is that you're missing tagging opportunities. So similar to these tweets, every time you have the opportunity to tag a business, person, place, etc., do it. This will cause more people to see it and engage with it, which in turn will lead to more people liking and seeing your page itself. And then I'm not sure if you can do this because of confidentiality with minors or anything else, but would you be able to tag parents in the photos when their kids are featured? Kind of for the same reason that I mentioned for Twitter, is that parents love knowing what their kids are up to at school and kind of seeing pictures of their kids doing a fun activity or just having fun in general will really go a long way. So you can kind of drum up some more excitement by tagging them if you're able to do that. And then lastly, being somewhat inactive over the summer is a weakness. So you're more active on Facebook than Twitter, which is great, but you also want to make sure that there's not too much time that goes by without any updates. So similar to what I listed for Twitter is that parents of students love to hear any changes you make to the school. So whether it's making improvements or just doing anything to kind of better the school or just show what the school has been up to over the summer will really help with kind of convincing the parents of potential students to send their kids there. It's just another deciding factor to know the school is really cautious or really passionate about continuing to improve and see what they can constantly do better. Lastly, for Instagram, one of your strengths is doing an awesome job of featuring your students in the various activities that Quincy Catholic Academy does. So this is key. You want to make sure that you constantly have a curation of photos to pull from posting. So as mentioned with Facebook, parents love seeing what their children are doing at school. As the older the students get, the less likely they are to tell their parents what their school day was like, and Instagram is the perfect outlet for doing that. And another strength is that your account is a business account. So this I applaud you for, because with Instagram accounts, you can either have a personal account or a business account. So although businesses aren't technically required to have a business account by Instagram, they're actually ideal for the sole purpose of viewing analytics. So analytics, which I'm going to mention further when I get to that template, is huge for tracking your social media growth. You want to know what type of content is working or isn't working so that you can either imitate it or improve it. And having access to these analytics will really help you to do that. So it can help you to determine what time you should be posting, where your followers are located, how your followers are divided by gender, and more. And weaknesses. Your Instagram handle is linked wrong at the bottom of your website. This is actually a big issue. So you want to make sure that you change this ASAP because you never want to lead website visitors to broken links as they won't try to find the correct link on their own. So make sure that this is kind of done with all on your website, but constantly, well, not constantly, but just make sure to check up throughout the year that all the links on your website are not broken because, again, you don't want to lead people to dead ends. The second weakness is that you're not following anyone or using hashtags. So as mentioned in prior sections, you want to be following parents of current students and parents of potential students, as well as using hashtags. So these hashtags are listed below, but they're vital for reaching the families that you would love to see at Quincy Catholic Academy. We're now on my process for writing and scheduling content. So one issue is that a lot of people face is how do you plan out the content? So I wrote out my process for writing content. Basically, I take one day each week, sit down, spend a few hours, and just bang out the content for the whole week. Just write it all out right there. That makes it easy for me, so that way if I don't have to worry about writing it day by day because one, days get busy, and two, I won't have to worry about what types of content I need to post. How do you know what type of content to post? So I wrote that you should follow the 1/3 social media rule. And this is something that I mentioned earlier. But basically, a lot of people follow the 80-20 rule, which means that 80% of the content you should be posting should be other people's content, and 20% should be your own content and kind of promotional. So I wrote that the 1/3 social media rule, which is kind of my, it's kind of my variation of it. So it should be 1/3 of your content should be promotional, 1/3 should be content sharing, and 1/3 should be engaging. So examples of promotional content are events you're hosting, encouraging people to apply to the school, links to articles you post on your site, links to articles that are posted about you on other sources, and basically any content that classifies as promoting Quincy Catholic Academy in any way. The next is examples of content sharing, so that would be articles from other sources or videos from other sources, so basically anything that comes from a source that isn't Quincy Catholic Academy in order to build that credibility and trust. And then lastly, engagement for 1/3 social media rules. So that could be the daily prayers, questions, photos from field trips, events, etc. Anything that will encourage engagement or conversation. So you should post Monday through Friday. But if you want to post on weekends, you could. Go for it. You should post 4 to 6 times per day on Twitter because the life of a tweet is incredibly short. So 1 to 2 times in the morning, 1 to 2 in the afternoon, 1 to 2 in the evening. You should post 2 times per day on Facebook. You can find these times by going to the Insights tabs and then going to post engagements and then hovering your mouse over each day to find the most popular times. Then you should post 1 time per day on Instagram. So you actually can't view your statistics for Instagram until you reach 100 followers. But if you wanted to, once you reach those 100 followers, I listed out how you're able to view your statistics. But for now, you can actually post between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. So you can create and curate content. So creating content is writing your own content. Curating content is gathering content from other sources. So the easiest way to create content is put yourself in your target market's place and think about it from their perspective. So kind of basically put yourself in your shoes and ask yourself, if I was a potential parent who would like to send their children here, what would I want to know? And ask yourself these questions, find the answers to them, and figure out how you can turn the answers into content to use. And then I also listed ways that you can curate content, so finding credible sources to post from. How do you prevent yourself from running out of content to post? Take pictures of everything. Put them in a folder, share the access with teachers and other faculty, and just make sure that people are constantly putting photos in there. That way you never run out of anything. How do you keep the same voice across social media when you have multiple people posting? So you can create like a style guide that outlines the voice, tone, values, and style to ensure that the tone stays consistent. Or maybe you can even dedicate it to one person to write the content. But basically, it's really obvious when different people are posting and they're not following kind of set requirements for a voice. How do I schedule content on a third-party platform? So I actually recommend, if possible, not really posting social media in the moment for Twitter and Facebook. It's much easier to schedule things out. So there are a few different free Twitter scheduling tools. So I recommend Hootsuite or Buffer. And Facebook has its own native scheduler, so I recommend using that as well. And I listed out how to schedule. And then if you wanted to schedule for Instagram, you could use Planoly or Later, but if you don't want to schedule, you totally don't have to. And then how can you use the analytics from the monthly reports to create content? So the whole purpose of tracking your monthly analytics is to discover what types of content perform well and what types of content didn't perform well, so that you know what to imitate and which to stop posting. So by listing each post in the analytics and seeing how they performed, you're able to adjust your content and make sure your posts are resonating with your audience. And now we're on to organic growth strategy. So you have the content, you have the strategy, but now it's time to grow your accounts. Growing your accounts is important for gaining leads to your target market. But it's important to keep in mind that numbers really don't matter that much. It's reach and engagement that matter the most. And I mentioned this above, but think about it. Pretend that one Instagram account has 10,000 followers, with the one post getting 100 likes, a reach of 136, and an engagement of 102. Pretend another Instagram account has 900 followers, with one post getting 100 likes, a reach of 136, and an engagement of 102. The account with 900 followers that is actually doing much better because they have about 1/10 of the followers that the larger account does, but they have the same amount of engagement. And one very important thing to remember is to never do the following tactics to grow your social media accounts. So playing the follow and follow game, or purchasing or using any third-party apps that automatically like posts, comment on posts, follow accounts, etc. If you want to get genuine growth and engagement, follow these tips. So for Instagram, you should be using hashtags. I've been mentioning this throughout the whole guide. Whenever you post a photo, put the 25 hashtags in the first comment of the post, separate from the caption. So all you have to do is actually just copy and paste all of these hashtags into the caption. And one thing that I do is I actually keep a note in the Notes app of my iPhone with all these hashtags listed out. That way when it's time to post on Instagram, all you'll have to do is just go to the note on your phone and copy and paste. And you don't have to type in all these hashtags every single time. You should also put your location in every photo. So people can search for photos based off of location. So if you wanted to put Quincy, Massachusetts, that the photo will show under that location, and it allows your post to reach a wider audience. You should also be engaging with your ideal audience. So liking and commenting on photos 3 times per day, 10 minutes each time, using the following tactics below. So engaging with people that you're already following, engaging with people who use the hashtags that you use, and engaging with people through locations by searching a location. You can also follow the people who are following your competitors and tagging accounts if applicable. Facebook. Use Facebook Live. Facebook Live is the best type of content you can post on Facebook. So use it whenever it's appropriate. So you can do it for your events, or if you're doing an activity or a game or anything like that, Facebook Live would be a good idea to use, do it. Join town Facebook groups. So there are a ton of town Facebook groups out there, and for Milton, Quincy, Boston, Holbrook, Randolph, and Braintree, and promote Quincy Catholic Academy in there as long as the group doesn't have any rules about promoting things. You can also invite people to like the page, which I listed out below how to do, and again, tagging accounts if possible. Now on to Twitter. You should engage with your target market by replying to their tweets. Again, 3 times per day, 10 minutes each time. Following the people who are following your competitors, and tagging accounts if applicable. Now, this is the outlined content calendar. Basically, I'm not going to go through and read everything and what everything means because it's pretty self-explanatory. But I'm going to show you the content calendar. I use this exact content calendar for my social media management clients, and also I send them to my social media consulting clients such as you. And basically what the point of this is that it helps you to really map out and outline the type of content you want to be posting before you actually go ahead and schedule it or post it. That way you really have an idea of what's going out, making sure it's all different and it's not all the same. So this is the content calendar. Basically, I'm actually gonna have to move this over. Okay, so as you can see, I separated it by day and platform, and also at the bottom where the sheets are is the week. So as you can see, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And I actually have it started for this Sunday, October 22nd. That way you're able to definitely get a head start and you can really, really dive in and get your social media content planned out and scheduled. And I know it definitely seems overwhelming, but you'll really get used to it and it'll become a tool that you very quickly love. This is back to the outline content calendar. So I really just outlined everything that it includes and what each column means. So as you can see, time, type, topic, post, link, image, usernames. Now the monthly analytics report template. You want to be tracking your monthly analytics for the 3 platforms that you're on because you want to calculate the amount of growth that your marketing strategy has brought, and you also want to evaluate the types of content that perform well and don't perform well so you can use this information when planning future content. And I also listed out how to find the numbers. And then I listed out what each, basically what each term means. That way you have an idea, but again, these are pretty self-explanatory. So I listed Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then I'll show this monthly analytics report. I'm just going to move the screen over again. But this is Instagram, where you can fill it all in. So if you see at the bottom, I have the different sheets. So this is October Instagram. You can click over here to go to October. Well, yeah, October Facebook. And then you can click on the other one to go to October Twitter. And then the same repeat for November and December. And then I'm just going to move this screen back over. And now we're at the end of the guide. So congratulations, you're now ready to up your marketing game. By reading through this extensive plan, you now have a customized social media strategy to use across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram that is relevant to your target market, a competitor analysis that outlines not only the strengths and weaknesses of what your competitors have on social media, but also how you can use those strengths and weaknesses to your advantage, a social media audit of the current state of your accounts that outlines your strengths and weaknesses so you know what to keep and what to change, a process for writing and scheduling content so you know exactly how to write content and schedule it quickly and efficiently, a social media content calendar that you can use to plan your social media content for not only the rest of the year but also years to come, a growth strategy with tactics specific to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram that will grow your social media accounts with followers that are your exact target market, and a monthly analytics report template that allows you to track your progress across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram so you can analyze what content is working and what isn't. Using all of these resources, you'll be able to develop active social media accounts with great content and engaged followings. So here's to taking control of your social media, and I cannot wait to see where this guide brings you with your presence.